Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 306 for the 3rd of May. Welcome to May 2020. Wasn't April long? I think April was about April, May, June, July, and November all wrapped into one. It seemed like a very long month. But here in Australia, it's Richard Saunders here, by the way, from Sydney, Australia. Here in Australia, in Sydney at least, in the state of New South Wales, things are being a little bit more relaxed. They've let us visit people and a few more things. So hopefully we're all on the right track. But I'm not alone in thinking it's all beginning to feel like a dream, but there is still much to look forward to. And I think there's much to look forward to on this week's episode of the Skeptic Zone. We're going to start with a story about a magazine that's been yanked, pulled, kicked out, given its marching orders from the shelves of two very popular and big supermarket chains here in Australia, Woolworths and Coles. The magazine in question is called What Doctors Don't Tell You. Why don't they tell you everything? What is this? What are they keeping from you? Why would doctors not be telling you things? Find out with our story covering What Doctors Don't Tell You, Professor Darren Saunders and radio host Ben Fordham. And stay tuned at the end of the show for an update. This story coming up was recorded a few days ago, and since then there's been an update which I will bring you at the end of the show. When will we be free of conspiracies? That's what I want to know. After that, it's the new favourite on the Skeptic Zone, Logical Fallacies with Michelle Bickersma. And Michelle will be talking this week about the false dilemma, also known as the false dichotomy, the either-or, and the false choice. This is when an argument is framed as having only two options or conclusions when there are, in fact, other logical alternatives. The false dilemma, coming up a little bit later on with Michelle Bickersma. And if you go to skepticzone.tv and have a look down the little faces of the people taking part in this week, you'll see a wonderful caricature done by the fabulous Celestia Ward from Two Head Studios. I think it really captures Michelle very well. After that, it's the Book of Tim. Tim Mendham comes back with a look at Stonehenge. What's the deal with Stonehenge? And Tim will make a brief reference to a book by Lynn Kelly called The Memory Code, and I'll certainly add a link to that book in this week's show notes. A wonderful book. Then to round off the show, a blast from the past from 2002, when a very young, well, sort of young, Richard Saunders went to Eastside Radio FM here in Sydney, Australia. It's a community radio station. And I was very recently made president of the Australian Skeptics, and I was asked to come on radio to talk about skepticism, what the Australian Skeptics do and that sort of thing. Well, it's really interesting listening to that, to hear me all those years ago. The basic principles I talk about are much the same, I think. I hope I've learnt a lot in the 18 years since this recording, but the foundation, I think, is still firm. See what you think. See if I made a goose out of myself. I'll have to ask Maynard about making a goose out of himself at the end of the show. Speaking about Maynard and being a goose, I don't know if you've caught up with the fact that every Friday evening at 8:30 p.m. Sydney time at maynard.com.au, or more importantly at the Facebook side of Maynard, he does a live stream, a live half-hour show of just being a real dag, a real goose, jumping around his lounge room, playing some great hits and video clips and things like that. Worth checking out. Great fun. I sat back with a drink the other night and I really enjoyed the show done by Maynard. And you can enjoy that next Friday night. Well, that's enough for me at the moment. Stay tuned at the end of the show for an update to the What Doctors Don't Tell You story and some other announcements from me. But now it's time for me to run downstairs. And folks, because I have walked something in the order of 100 kilometers this week, I kid you not, I've looked at the data gathered by my Apple Watch, which tracks my activities. I've walked about 100 kilometers to be fit because the gym shut, and you know the story. I'm going to indulge myself. I think I'm going to have some peanut M&Ms or maybe some Dutch licorice. Yeah. While I do that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. Conspiracy theories. What would skeptics do without conspiracy theories? What would we talk about? It seems to me that at the root of many things that we talk about or discuss or take action against in our society these days are conspiracy theories when you think about it. Look at the anti-vaccination crowd. A lot of what they believe in boils down to conspiracy theories. There is a conspiracy from the evil one world government or whomever, Bill Gates maybe, to keep us all sick and then sell us vaccinations. There is a conspiracy to keep us in the dark about the microchips injected into babies. I wonder if they're the same microchips that fall out of the skies with chemtrails. That's another conspiracy theory. Who shot JFK? Well, that's a conspiracy theory. They're trying to hide the truth from you. Which brings me to the title of a magazine here in Australia. Actually, it's Australia/New Zealand, but I think this is originally from the UK. The magazine is called, or maybe it's America, the magazine is called What Doctors Don't Tell You. And again, it's largely based on conspiracy, misinformation. And I've got a copy right here. Let me have a look. Protect yourself from Wi-Fi and 5G. A step-by-step guide to staying safe. Page 60. What doctors don't tell you. And inside the very front cover here, the first big full-page glossy ad is for Mr. Vitamin's Wellbeing Clinic. And there's one not too far from where I live, actually. Mr. Vitamin's Wellbeing Clinic offers a variety of natural health modalities, including nutrition, naturopathy, herbal medicine, iridology, aromatherapy and massage. Our qualified team of practitioners advocate a holistic approach to healing. Naturopathy, nutrition, herbal medicine, functional testing, homeopathy, aromatherapy, iridology, it goes on. On the very back page of this issue of the magazine, we have an ad for what looks to be like a green disc Polaroid. First demonstrated by Georges Lahovsky and Nikola Tesla. Oh, poor Tesla. His name gets dragged through everything, doesn't it? This is a green disc, according to the ads, you place on your stomach, on your dog, on your throat, on your forehead, on your foot. Improved energy, vitality, and more. I think you get the idea. Ooh, watch our video. www.polaroidhealth.com. Oh, well, we can have a large drink and have a look at that video. Oh, what's the fine print? These statements have not been evaluated by the US Drug and Food Administration or Health Canada or any other regulatory body in any countries. This product is not intended to dispense medical advice, diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease or condition. I guess it looks nice, though. Wellness at your fingertips, it says. There's that term again, wellness. Now, I mentioned this magazine, and it's a similar sort of magazine to ones we've seen in Australia for years, like New Dawn, Nexus, Fortean Times, and I think a lot of these magazines started life as UFO magazines, basically. And they've moved on to so-called New Science. They still do cover UFOs. Fear-mongering, alternative health, lots and lots of 5G conspiracy theories. But this magazine, What Doctors Don't Tell You, which of course boils down to conspiracy theories. I'm going to have a look at page 60. Here we go. Protecting yourself against 5G. And the graphic is a woman with a cell phone up to her ear and sort of scrunching up her face as if she's in pain. Then one wonders why she's using the phone. As of a few days ago, this magazine has been pulled off the shelves of two leading supermarkets here in Australia, supermarket chains, that being Coles and Woolworths. And this came about because the University of New South Wales Associate Professor of Medical Science, Dr. Darren Saunders, no relation, I don't think, discovered the magazine on a shopping trip. And he thought, well, what can I do about this? It's full of very bad information, and especially in this current environment of the COVID-19, possibly very bad information indeed. He contacted Ben Fordham, the journalist and radio broadcaster over at Radio 2GB. Now, it must be said that Radio 2GB, it's one of Australia's oldest talk radios, I guess. And it is a bit of a mixed bag, but I must say, by and large, Australian skeptics have had a pretty good run on 2GB. It does promote climate denial, which is a pity. But over the 20 years I've been doing this, I've been on Radio 2GB many times. Most notably, a couple of years back, I had a regular segment with the late night show by Mike Williams. And before that, I would often find myself in the studio to discuss skeptical matters and take talkback with the host Glenn Wheeler, very popular radio host. Sadly, a number of years ago, he was involved in a motor accident and has been unable to return to full-time work, which is a great pity. Lovely bloke, Glenn Wheeler. And various other radio hosts have had me on to bend spoons and talk about this, that, or the other. I don't think I've been on with Ben Fordham. Nevertheless, Dr. Saunders rang up Ben Fordham and did a spot on air, which I will play some highlights from now.
Why is there so much dodgy medical advice doing the rounds? We've been speaking about the dangerous nutter Pete Evans and his cuckoo theories about machines with recipes for coronavirus. Well, now I've got some serious questions for the major supermarkets to answer. Because if you go into Coles or Woolworths today, you'll find a magazine for sale at the checkout. It's called What Doctors Don't Tell You. And it's filled with dangerous misinformation and dodgy health advice. And if you go to their website, and I'm not going to give you the web address because I don't want to send them any more traffic, the stories are even worse. There are stories on the website linking vaccines to autism, reports claiming that fluoride lowers the IQ of children, and there is a report downplaying the danger of coronavirus. What is Coles and Woolies doing, allowing these nutcases to spread this dangerous stuff at their checkouts? Dr. Darren Saunders is an Associate Professor of Medical Science at the University of New South Wales. He brought it to our attention and he joins us on the line. Dr. Darren Saunders, good afternoon.
G'day, Ben. How are you?
I can't believe the rubbish in these magazines, and I can't believe that Woolies and Coles are selling them at the checkout.
Oh, look, I was doing my shopping late last night, to avoid the crowds as we're supposed to be, and standing in the checkout line, I couldn't believe it when I saw this thing. It really, there's a reason doctors don't tell you the stuff that's in here, and that's because a lot of it's dangerous.
So when they say what doctors don't tell you, they don't tell you it because it's BS.
Yeah, that's right. There's a really good reason that doctors won't tell you what's in this sort of magazine. And you're right. I mean, the website is even more terrifying, and the Facebook page is even more terrifying. It's really, these kind of magazines, there's a trick to them. They put stuff in there, there's little bits of science, and there's very sciencey sounding words, and they kind of use that as a hook to drag you into all the conspiracy stuff and to the dangerous advice around vaccines and everything else.
So that was Dr. Darren Saunders appearing on Radio 2GB with Ben Fordham. And the page from the radio station about this item, which I will link to in the show notes, and you can hear the whole interview there for yourself. Supermarkets scrap dangerous conspiracy magazines. Australia's two largest supermarkets have agreed to stop selling an anti-vaccination alternative medicine magazine at their checkouts and in their aisles after being called out by Ben Fordham. The magazine, What Doctors Don't Tell You, is stacked page to page with conspiracies, dangerous misinformation, and dodgy medical advice. On the front page, hydrogen gas is advocated as a heart disease treatment, and it warns of dangers associated with 5G and Wi-Fi networks. The magazine's website contains further unfounded claims linking vaccinations with autism and fluoride with lower IQ in children. The article goes on to say, University of New South Wales Associate Professor of Medical Science Dr. Darren Saunders discovered the magazine on a shopping trip and told Ben Fordham he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Despite initially defending their decision to stock the magazine, following the interview, Coles committed to removing it from all their stores nationwide. Woolworths has since followed suit, informing their supplier they'll be removing the magazine from sale, but say, quote, "The decision to stock the magazine doesn't mean we endorse the editorial views it holds," end quote. Ben commended both supermarkets for responding so strongly and so quickly. Now, this story was picked up by the news.com.au website, which says Coles and Woolworths have bowed to a push from Sydney radio host Ben Fordham to pull a magazine from shelves nationwide. A magazine spouting complementary therapies and alternative medicines and telling readers how to protect themselves from 5G has been yanked from Coles and Woolworths shelves nationwide. The decision on the April-May 2020 edition of What Doctors Don't Tell You was made on Tuesday afternoon after Radio 2GB host Ben Fordham expressed outrage at it being stocked in Australia's two biggest supermarkets. It goes on to say in a statement to news.com.au on Tuesday, a Coles spokesman said What Doctors Don't Tell You magazine, quote, was ranged as part of a 2-week trial of new magazine titles under an arrangement with our supplier, end quote, and it will not be part of the available range going forward. Royal Australian College for General Practitioners President Dr. Harry Nespollen applauded the decision, calling it an exercise in corporate responsibility. Quote, "Doctors aren't keeping anything from you. We are working as hard as we can to help our patients every day," end quote, Dr. Nespollen said. Quote, "Now, more than ever, we need to heed expert medical advice and ignore pseudo-scientific nonsense and myths that will cure COVID-19 and all else. I understand that people are anxious and suffering from information overload, but please apply a sniff test to information you are seeing on social media or supermarket shelves. Instead, listen to your local GP, because expert advice matters and we're all doing what we can to keep you safe and well." End quote. The What Doctors Don't Tell You magazine began as a newsletter in 1989. There you go. Published by author Lynn McTaggart and her husband Brian Hubbard, who recently held a series of COVID-19 webinars, according to its UK-based website. Quote, "What Doctors Don't Tell You publishes the latest healthcare news alongside information on complementary therapies and alternative medicines, with a host of features and stories written by leading experts and our highly respected regular contributors," end quote, it states. And there's a little bit more information on that page, but I'll certainly link to it in this week's show notes. So what's the positive here? What's the positive out of this whole crazy situation with COVID-19 and the damage it's doing around the world? Every cloud has a silver lining, of course. And one of the advantages, or one of the positives that come out of this whole situation, is that magazines like this and dodgy health advice and practitioners who were sort of flying under the radar in times past have now come to the fore, because the authorities are taking their claims seriously, at last, we might say. And we hope that together with the action taken against Pete Evans, you would have heard about last week, and his machine, the so-called biocharger, which our friend Pontus Berkman said it was a cross between a fax machine and a Dalek. Well, these sort of things are now coming to the attention of the right sort of people, and they are taking action. So maybe in the weeks to come, we can report things to you like action taken against the outrageous claims made at the moment on the website of Homeopathy Plus. They've got a whole section devoted to COVID-19. And other practitioners around the country who also have similar outrageous claims, which is a good chance for me to remind you again of something we mentioned last week. The website coronaconspiracy.cloud is up and running. It's a fascinating thing to look at because if you go there, you can see what other people have been uploading, what they've found in their travels on the internet, Facebook or out and about. And you can see for yourself examples of quacks and others promoting their cures or treatments or preventions for COVID-19. I'm just at the site now, and there's one there for a kinesiologist. There's also some homeopathic information up there, other general conspiracy theories. It's worth a look. It's a good reference. And if you find something that purports to be a cure, treatment, prevention for COVID-19, you can take a screen capture of it, a photograph of it, and go to conspiracy.cloud and upload that for us all to see. But getting back to another issue that's been raised about this what doctors don't tell you being taken off the shelves at various supermarkets, there is the cry now of this is censorship and we need to read whatever we can read. Well, people still can get this magazine. You can go to their website and look at their articles. I think it's still available in news agencies. Well, it is, because I bought one myself there just the other day. But that's a debate maybe for another time. This issue I have right here, I guess it'll go into the skeptical archives. And don't forget, you can follow the links of the articles and the items I've mentioned in this week's show notes. And someone asked me the other day, where are these show notes? Well, if you go to skepticzone.tv, you can see a listing of the last 4, 5, 6, 7 episodes of all the show notes right there, including time codes. So you can jump right to the section you're interested in. And then once those disappear from the homepage, if you click the episodes link, you can see all the episodes going back 12 years, plus the show notes. And it's searchable too.
This is Brian Dunning from Skeptoid here, quarantining away in Central Oregon. A few weeks ago, I was supposed to speak at an academic conference on conspiracy theories in Miami, but like all the world's other in-person conferences, it was canceled due to COVID-19. So I was asked to put my talk online. It's called We Are All Conspiracy Theorists, and it's a complete survey of the whole phenomenon of conspiratorial thinking. I hope you enjoy it, and please share it with anyone who needs it. To watch We Are All Conspiracy Theorists now, search YouTube for Skeptoid Media and click on our logo. It's also easy to find on Facebook on the Skeptoid Media page. We Are All Conspiracy Theorists. Online now. Please enjoy.
Logical fallacies. What are logical fallacies, and why is it important that critical thinkers should know about them? A logical fallacy is an error we can make in reasoning, but it usually crops up when we are discussing or arguing our point of view. Some people might even knowingly use them to try and score cheap points in an argument due to intellectual laziness. They are traps we can fall into, but if we know what to look out for, we can spot them when they occur and stop ourselves from using them. This time we'll look at the false dilemma.
Also known as the false dichotomy, the either or, and the false choice. This is when an argument is framed as having only two options or conclusions, when there are in fact other logical alternatives.
Not all black and white situations are truly black and white. Sometimes there are many other alternatives or shades of grey between the two extremes. Being asked to choose between the extremes can lead you to an unsatisfactory and even false conclusion.
The TV news show did a sting on a so-called psychic and showed that she was nothing more than a con artist. Other psychics, however, cannot be explained away so easily, so they must be real.
After many decades of investigations by Australian skeptics and people like James Randi, we know that many, maybe the majority of people claiming to be psychic or mystical healers, are not con artists per se, nor do they have genuine psychic powers. Many are, to one degree or another, deluded and really do think they have the powers they claim. They can be honest, caring people who only want to share what they perceive is their gift. There are also performers known as mentalists who also use hot and cold reading techniques and are good at reading people in a psychological way. This is a legitimate skill set and is valid entertainment. These other possibilities, however, are one step too far for most TV or other news investigations that need to give their audience a simple choice and report accordingly. The psychic is either a con artist or the real deal, never an entertainer, such as a mentalist, amateur psychologist, or deluded but well-meaning person.
If you're not for me, then you're against me.
This is a cry we've heard from politics to religion and in many other situations. It's an underhanded way of polarising people to gain their support. You might agree with much of what someone says, but at the same time have concerns or issues with other things. Not agreeing with someone does not therefore mean you are opposed to them.
I reject mainstream medicine because lots of people die due to medical accidents or misdiagnosis, and drug companies are just in it for the money.
It is true that medical accidents and misdiagnoses occur. Human error is a factor in everything that involves our input. Drug companies can indeed be profit-driven too. However, to reject all evidence-based medicine on these grounds and concede none of how often people are cured or saved is coming to an extreme conclusion based on a false dichotomy. Just because science-based medical practice isn't all good, it doesn't mean that it must be all bad and we should seek alternative medical treatments instead. It's so easy to be given a simple choice, not too much to consider. And with one of the choices made out to be the right one or the only real one to choose. There are times when a choice like this is obvious. For example, is slavery good, yes or no? But for many situations, the false dilemma can rob you of the real answer. Next time, we'll look at the opposite of the false dilemma, that of the middle ground. Knowing a logical fallacy when you hear one, and even knowing its name, is important when arguing your point of view. However, you may come across as arrogant and not get very far if you call it out by name to your opponent when you hear it being used. If your opponent calls you out for using one, it's time to stop and think about how you are making your case. Use your knowledge of logical fallacies wisely, and remember that even if your point of view is right and you know all the pitfalls in arguing your case, it doesn't always mean you'll win on the day. And as skeptics, we must also remember that we too can be wrong at times. I'm Michelle Bickersma from the Vic Skeptics. Thanks for listening.
Hi, this is Susan Gerbeck from GSOW. That's Guerrilla Skepticism on Wikipedia. I want to thank everyone who, via the Skeptic Zone podcast, has contacted me to become an editor on Wikipedia. Together, we have worked on or created over 1,200 Wikipedia pages. Countless thousands of people all over the world access those pages each day. In fact, we're over 52 million page views. Like many listeners, I also give back to the Skeptic Zone via monthly micropayments, and I want to encourage you to do the same. Is the information and entertainment you get each week from the show worth $5 or $10 a month? I sure think it is. Follow the link at skepticzone.tv and show your practical support. Thank you.
And now, a reading from the Book of Tim with Tim Mendham.
Hi, my name is Tim Mendham. I'm the Executive Officer of Australian Skeptics Inc. and I'm also the editor of our magazine, The Skeptic. And today I'd like to read, which is actually from a book review published in The Skeptic in September 2016, and that would be Volume 36, Number 3. This is called Please to Remember. There is a huge number of buildings and constructions that are readily identifiable around the world. Mention the Taj Mahal, the Empire State Building, the Eiffel Tower, the Sydney Opera House, and you're pretty well confident that most people recognise them, even if they aren't all sure where they are. The ancient world has its own share of instant recognition: the Parthenon, the Great Wall of China, the Colosseum, the Sphinx, the pyramids, and Stonehenge. Stonehenge is a particular favourite site for me. I was fortunate enough to visit it before they closed off the monument itself to the prying eyes and prizing hands of the thousands of visitors it attracted. You can still get in now, but you have to be part of a tour or a druid. In those days, and I'm talking frankly 40 years ago, you could walk around the trilithons and stones, touch the surface, see the marks, measure out the distances, and no doubt feel the energy emanating from every rock and pebble. Well, it was 40 years ago, and energies were a lot more feelable then. Of course, the UK and parts of Europe are rife with Paleolithic, Neolithic, megalithic, and other lithic leftovers. Stone circles, wood circles, mounds, tumuli, barrows, hillside carvings. You can only imagine what these would have been like when everything was in place, before the ravages of time and the locals' need for building materials took their toll. As of 2013, England alone had roughly 20,000 ancient sites designated as scheduled monuments, and there are formal and informal moves to maintain as many of them as possible. Under the Ancient Monuments and Archaeological Areas Act 1979, it is a criminal offence to demolish, destroy, damage, remove, repair, alter, or add to a scheduled monument, unless prior consent has been obtained from the Secretary of State in the form of scheduled monument consent. There have been several goes at returning Stonehenge to something approaching its former glory. Up until 1918, it was actually in private hands, though under preservation orders, and over the last century, some stones have been lifted, straightened, and reinforced. Research into its construction continues apace, with recent discoveries of further archaeological artefacts in the area. In 2014, the University of Birmingham announced the discovery of as many as 17 new monuments revealed nearby, late Neolithic monuments that resemble Stonehenge, suggesting a complex of numerous related monuments. One of the more curious factoids about Stonehenge is that Charles Darwin dabbled in archaeology there in 1877, experimenting with the rate at which remains sink into the earth for his book, The Formation of Vegetable Mould Through the Action of Worms. But with the high profile comes the weirdos hopping onto the bandwagon, pushing their own brands of science. In fact, with regard to the Great Pyramid and Stonehenge, there are probably no buildings that are more subject to wacky theories. Everything from giant energy sources to alien landing spots, biblical predictors, musical instruments, etc., casually heaped onto the buildings with book after book espousing one shocking discovery or truth revealed after the other. Eric von Daniken mentions both, along with Easter Island, Nazca Lions and Australian Aborigine legend, in Chariots of the Gods, Question mark. You have to love that question mark. Von Däniken played on the idea of a mystery solved, not to mention a bet each way on whether it was true or not, with his answer being yes and ours being decidedly not. The plethora of theories on Stonehenge, as in all areas of the paranormal, rely for their entry into the field largely on the inability or unwillingness of scientists and researchers to be 100% definitive. John Fowles, author of The Magus and the French Lieutenant's Woman, is a bit of a mystic himself, or at least one who likes to be one with nature. In his book, The Enigma of Stonehenge, he suggests that, quote, the very and quite proper caution of modern scientists in their conclusions about the ancient realities of Stonehenge effectively leaves a huge empty space, a field for speculation in the less scientific mind. In this, Stonehenge remains almost like a blank sheet of paper, in a world where, in terms of knowledge, blank sheets become increasingly rare things. Since Fowles' book appeared in 1980, continued research has elicited much more about the formation than was previously known or suspected. But it is the why as much as the how that intrigues most people. Fowles describes a public meeting he attended while writing his book, quote, with a packed audience of several hundred people to hear the principal living authority on Stonehenge, Professor Richard Atkinson, who died in 1994, give a lecture on the latest theories and discoveries concerning the monument. We listened to an eminently lucid and clinical discourse on the most recent datings of the major phases of building, on the results of the latest excavations. When this was done, the chairman, the equally authoritative Professor Stuart Piggott, called for questions. There came some requests for various elucidations of technical points, which were given. Then a young man stood up at the back. Would Professor Atkinson care to say anything about the peoples who built the three main phases, their culture and religion? Fowles said he might as well have asked a synod of Methodist ministers whether they would consider publishing a new edition of the Marquis de Sade's 120 Days of Sodom, or the Department of the Environment how we should apply to turn Stonehenge into a disco. All such speculation was futile. The wicked fellow was peremptorily told. Such information was strictly dependent on written records. The Stonehenge people did not have writing. We know nothing. We would never know anything. To speculate on such matters was totally unscientific. Now, at this stage, this article then went into a review of the book by Dr. Lynn Kelly, whose book, The Memory Code, has now been out for a few years, and she suggests a way that the people of that time could pass information to each other without writing, without any such tools, but orally. And I would highly recommend that people look up that book, The Memory Code, by Dr. Lynn Kelly, and have a look. It's a fascinating theory. She's presented it a number of times to skeptical meetings, and it's gone down very well. So with that, I will leave Stonehenge as it appeared in the Skeptic magazine, September 2016, Volume 36, Number 3. You can, of course, download that issue of the magazine, along with most others, from our website, www.skeptics.com.au, for free. Just look at the tag magazine and scroll down, and there you have 39 years of skeptical publications in Australia available for you to peruse and enjoy at your pleasure and your leisure.
Hi, this is Dr. Pamela Gay from Astronomy Cast. Each week, Fraser Kane and I take our listeners on a fact-based journey through the cosmos. With our weekly podcast, we explain not just what we know, but how we know what we know about this universe that we share. Check us out at astronomycast.com and look for us in iTunes, Google Play, and wherever you download podcasts. See you online.
Come with me now to the year 2002, when a very young Richard Saunders appeared on Eastside FM radio, community radio here in Sydney. I was newly president of the Australian Skeptics, and this was one of my first forays into a radio studio to do an interview.
You're listening to 89.7 FM Eastside Radio. The time is just on 28 3.5 minutes past 4. Before that announcement, we heard 2 songs from the rollicking Count Basie Big Band from the Verve Jazz Masters No. 2 CD, April in Paris, and that was followed by I Sent For You Yesterday. While the music was on, my studio guest sauntered in to join me. I'd like to welcome Richard Saunders, the President of the Australian Skeptics Incorporated. Welcome to Eastside Radio.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, how would you define the Australian Skeptics Incorporated?
We're a group of people interested in claims of the paranormal and the supernatural and all that sort of thing from a scientific point of view. In other words, we don't discount ghosts or spoon bending or ESP or tarot card reading or UFOs until we've investigated them properly. But we don't go in thinking they're a load of bunk to start with. We go in and see if there's anything there to investigate at all.
So I guess your motto would be seek the evidence.
Seek the evidence. We get claims all the time of all sorts of weird and wonderful things going on, and until we investigate them properly, we do not say they're rubbish, because they might well be true.
So everything's included until it's excluded.
Something like that, yeah. But then again, we can't ever truly discount anything entirely, because next year someone might come along and say, you see, homeopathic medicine really works, and then we'd have to admit, yes, it does.
When was the your group first founded?
Around about 1980, 1981. It sort of came out of all the fun stuff from the 1970s.
The Uri Geller spoon
all
that type of thing.
Now, I was, well, as we all were, slightly younger in the 1970s, and I remember that very well. The UFO craze, the Bigfoot craze, Loch Ness Monster, and of course Uri Geller.
So was there any particular event or incident that triggered formation of the group, or it just sort of it grew out of spontaneous combustion, as it were?
I like that analogy, that's quite good. There's a similar organization started a few years earlier in the United States it's called PSYCOP. I'm just going to try to find the Committee for the Scientific Investigations of Claims of the Paranormal, or words to that effect. They started up and sort of inspired some people out here to do a similar sort of thing. I think they were also started up because of the claims of Uri Geller and Bigfoot and all the rest of it.
Because I heard an interesting story about Uri Geller that he was at a dinner party and somebody was rubbishing all his claims, and when this critic got home and tried to open his front door, all his keys were bent. So you don't know how truthful that is.
Well, that's the thing. You see, now you say you've heard a story, and if you were to present that in a court of law, I don't think you'd get very far. See, why we can't discount that, because we weren't there. We don't know if his keys were bent. We don't even know if it's a true story. So it's very hard to comment on those things. But what we can say is that as far as we know, people like Uri Geller use simple magic tricks. We can do them ourselves. There are many people in the Skeptics who know how to bend spoons. It's not terribly difficult.
I guess you've got to become a celebrity before it becomes something that people notice.
Yes, I think that's right. Otherwise, people just get annoyed at you for bending their cutlery.
What would you say the aims or the objectives of your group?
Well, as I say, we investigate claims of the paranormal, and we like to be a sort of a sounding board for the media and the public if they've come across something that sounds a bit far-fetched, perhaps, and they're interested to know if there's been any research done in this area. They can always come and ask us, because we probably have looked into it.
What types of activities or functions or services do you offer to your members?
We certainly keep them updated into all our latest adventures, looking for ghosts or debunking this or investigating, I should say. We hold dinners 4 times a year here in Sydney, and other state capitals hold dinners as well. And we also have a great annual conference, which is in a different capital city every year. This year, Melbourne.
How often do people mistake skepticism for cynicism?
All the time. All the time. So I make a plea to everybody. We will happily accept any claim, be it spontaneous human combustion, which has been explained anyway. Spoon bending, as I said before, strange medical claims, if there is supporting evidence. That's the key. We will not rule out anything.
So I guess your motto is to look at everything with a critical eye as opposed to a negative eye.
Exactly.
Well, Richard, when I was looking on your website, the list of of topics or subjects that you cover would surely satisfy Philistine.
Well, I would certainly hope so. It's one of the plagues of being a skeptic or in a skeptical organization is you're almost expected to make intelligent, concise comments on hundreds of topics and to know them back to front. And if you don't, people assume that's a sign of weakness. No, you don't know what you're talking about, you skeptics, blah, blah, blah. Well, we do our best.
Has there been any change in focus or emphasis over the last couple of decades, in the sense that have you gone from astrology and UFOs and crop circles to things like aromatherapy, feng shui, vitamin supplements, that type of thing?
Generally speaking, that's right. I mean, we're not discounting or forgetting or ignoring all those other topics, but quite frankly, they have been done to death. But they're still out there.
What can you learn that's new about the Loch Ness Monster?
Well, that's true. And how many times must you debunk something before you can simply say, look, honestly, let's move on now. Obviously, there's no basis behind things like astrology and water divining, but they're evergreens. They keep cropping up. But yes, now our focus is more on the so-called alternative medicine and that sort of stuff.
It's a bit like the great controversy with unique water that's been raging in the not so recent past.
Yeah, well, it's another thing. It's simply, at this stage, things like unique water are just another unproven claim. Now, we're not saying that in the years to come the science may discover, there really is something here, but we just have to lump it with all the other unproven claims at the moment. Like I said before, we will keep an open mind.
So I guess for something like alternative medicine, a better terminology from your perspective would be, I say, natural therapy or something, or not even that.
Not even that, because natural is another marketing word. It doesn't mean anything. What's natural? I mean, natural is early death, pain and suffering for humans. So if these things claim to prevent that, that's hardly natural. Natural is just a marketing tool. It sounds good. It sounds good. It doesn't actually have to do anything or back up its claims. If you want the cold facts, people, modern scientific medicine has given this population a longer and healthier lifespan than at any time in human history. I know where I'd put my bets.
What about the raging debate of creationism versus Darwinism?
Well, it's raging in the minds of the creationists, and there's not too many of them out there, but they are a powerful lobby. This debate was won 100 years ago or so. There's no debate. I mean, it's a religious dogma. It's their tiny little view of how the universe came to be. It's no more valid than all the other cultures who have equally interesting stories about how the universe came to be, but they have the lobby power. And thankfully in this country it's no longer taught in schools, but I think there are states in the United States.
Many states, yeah. And it's growing, which is quite frightening.
It's very frightening. It has absolutely nothing to do with science. There's no scientific backing up for creationist ideas. They call it creationist science. Again, that's just simply a marketing tool. It is not science. It has nothing to do with science. They start with the answer. This is the answer. This is how it happened. Whereas science never starts with the answer. Science always starts with the question.
Science would be a lot easier if you could work backwards.
Yeah, it
sounds like economics. As I mentioned right at the start of my show, my interest in trying to get somebody from your group was triggered when I took my children to the Chinese dinosaurs exhibition at the Australian Museum, and I noticed that the Australian Skeptics were a sponsor of that.
Yeah.
Why did you choose to do that?
The museum approached us and said, would we like to be sponsors and sponsor the feathered dinosaurs? It's one of our long-standing issues is the creationist lobby. And we've sponsored a group of dinosaurs on display now in the Australian Museum, which show an unmistakable transition from dinosaurs to birds. This is blatant. This is, here it is. There are bits, there are missing links. It's all there. And there's many more in China. So this is a great opportunity for us to make a strong statement and support for the theory of evolution and the Australian Museum, which we're tremendously grateful to.
I believe also that you have a very generous prize, no less than $100,000. I'll repeat that, dear listener, $100,000. You don't often get a prize like that on community radio. And the challenge is?
The challenge is, now, if you can perform a supernatural or paranormal act, now I'm talking about astrology, I'm talking about faith healing, clairvoyance, tarot card reading, spoon bending, all the rest of it.
All of the above.
All the above. If you can show us through an independent referee, we'll set up a test with you, mutually agreed conditions. We'll have an independent umpire to judge the test, and if you, after the test, show us that yes, you can divine the future by looking at the stars or whatever it may be, we'll give you $100,000. Not only that, we'll put you in direct contact with Mr. James Randi in the United States, who will, after a similar test, give you around about $2 million Australian. Easy money, don't you think? I mean, there are hundreds of people out there saying they can do this stuff.
What do they say? The phones are lit up.
So calling all astrologers, come on.
Finally, how can people get in touch with you, even the ones who are not interested in winning the money, just joining your group?
Right. The best way is simply look at our website, which is www.skeptics, and that's spelled with a K, so that's skeptics.com.au. And there's hundreds of pages on that site. I was looking at it the other day. I can't believe it. There's all sorts of information there about astrology and UFOs and spoon bending and all the rest of it, and information about our group and what we do. So come by and have a look, and who knows, you might learn something.
Well, I'll just repeat that address, www.skeptics, that's spelled skeptics.com.au, and I can vouch for the scale and depth of the website. Very interesting it was indeed. Well, I'd like to thank my guest this afternoon, Richard Saunders, President of the Australian Skeptics Incorporated.
Thank you.
Once again, even more important perhaps than the website, there's $100,000 with a potential of $2 million.
I'd like to win this money myself, folks. I really
if
would.
you can prove to the satisfaction of a mutually agreed independent referee, judge, whatever you want to call them, that you can carry out a paranormal or some freakish act.
Well, I wouldn't call it freakish. There's another reason why we're doing this. We seriously want to find someone who can back up a paranormal claim, because it would expand the horizons of science. It would just be wonderful. We really do want to find someone who can tell the future or bend a spoon or something like that. It would just be a revelation, and we would nominate them for the Nobel Prize and all the rest of it.
Well, I think the Nobel Prize would be defunct at that point. Well, I think a fairly appropriate point to call on my next song, June Christie, backed up by the Stan Kenton Orchestra, and it's How High the Moon.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. Now, as mentioned at the top of the show, there is an update to the What Doctors Don't Tell You story. And this update appeared not long after I recorded the segment. And this comes to us once again from the website of 2GB. And I'll link to this in the show notes. And the story says, Anti-Vaccination magazine lashes out at Ben Fordham. Alternative medicine magazine, What Doctors Don't Tell You, has lashed out after a push from Ben Fordham saw the publication scrapped from supermarket shelves, despite initially defending their decision to stock the magazine, allegedly filled with conspiracies, dangerous misinformation and dodgy medical advice. Following Ben's interview with Dr. Darren Saunders, Coles and Woolworths committed to removing it from all stores nationwide. In the days since, Ben says he's been bombarded with messages from anti-vaxxers telling me to drop off and mind my own business and open my eyes to alternative medicine. The publishers say the decision to remove the magazine was, quote, misplaced and reactionary. Our problem is not with the supermarkets, it's with Ben Fordham and 2GB, end quote, they told news.com.au. Responding to the accusations, Ben defended his pro-vaccination stance. Quote, I suppose if the publisher is having a go at me, they're also having a go at the medical experts who slammed their magazine. I'm comfortable in the knowledge that vaccines are supported by the Department of Health, Australian Medical Association, the Nurses and Midwifery Association, the Australian Academy of Science, the Centre for Disease Control, and countless other international medical bodies. Vaccines save millions of people's lives every year. Thanks to vaccines, smallpox has been eradicated and polio has all but vanished. So I'd say to the publishers and to the many people who've been trying to educate me online, get nicked, end quote. So, unsurprisingly, Ben Fordham is discovering, maybe he knows very well by now, that the anti-vaxxers are boisterous, militant, fanatical people. It's all part of the conspiracy. Thank you to those people who continue to support the Skeptic Zone during these strange times. And I know there are some of you who can't at the moment support the Skeptic Zone in the way you used to, but that's quite understandable. I think everybody understands at the moment. But if you are in the position of supporting the show, it's certainly appreciated and it's certainly necessary. I think I mentioned, some weeks ago now when things were starting to shut down, that all my other sources of income personally have dried up, disappeared, vanished, gone out the door. All to do with the... largely to do with the entertainment industry, including, and this really tugs at my heart, the live science shows from the mystery investigators, I think, have all been put on ice at the moment. So that's a great pity. That is a great pity. And I look forward eventually to when they can return. So thank you indeed. And you can sponsor the Skeptic Zone at skepticzone.tv. Go there and just click the Patreon or the PayPal link, and away you go. But for this week, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for show notes, contacts, and to access the back catalogue of episodes going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone podcast on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, visit our Facebook page, or leave a review on iTunes. You can also support the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone podcast is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian Skeptics or any other skeptical organisation. Hello to the afterthoughts, the people who listen after the music. Let's play the dice game, and we'll use a D20 this week. Haven't used a D20. For those of you new to this, if you're listening to the Skeptic Zone for the first time, you think, hang on, isn't the show over? No, sometimes it's not. And this is the part of the show where I roll a die 3 times, and you get to guess what number comes up. And if you think you're using psychic powers, that's fine. Probably using dumb luck like the rest of us, though. Here we go. Roll number 1. This is out of 20, remember. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and all the way up to 20. Here we go. Roll 1. And it's rested on number 10. Now, where's my Skeptic Zone pen? Oh, here it is. I usually write these down because sometimes... Okay, first number this week. 10. And here we go. Roll number 2. Fell under the... 10. Oh, well, 10. That's easy to remember. So 10. What are the chances, folks? What are the chances? Here we go. No. I kid you not. I am not making this up. 10. Wow. I suppose, if you do this long enough, if you roll lots and lots of dice long enough, how about that? Today's winning numbers are 10, 10, and 10. What the hell? Let me try that. Okay, I'm back. One more go. Just to satisfy my curiosity. 2.